What rule was made because of you? Story 1. My high school used to have a drug project where we'd have to give a presentation on a certain drug. There was a little thing on how it's made, like in a lab or it's a plant or whatever. I misunderstood how in-depth that part was supposed to be. Long story short, I spent 15 minutes teaching the entire freshman boys health class how to make black tar heroin, complete with a PowerPoint presentation. They don't have that part of the project anymore. Story 2. The place I work used to have unlimited coffee for their employees. 3 weeks after I started working, there was a sign above the coffee maker that stated that employees were limited to 3 cups a day. Story 3. My senior year in high school, I had an English teacher who allowed all work to be turned in up to the last week of class. I turned in pretty much every assignment right about then. Apart from the end-of-unit projects, next semester, all the work for all units was due at the end of the unit. Story 4. When I was 12, I discovered what really is masturbation. And as all boys once experienced at that age, every occasion was a good occasion. My dad brought me and New York sisters to a hotel with a pool and a jacuzzi that we had access to from our room. It was getting late, almost 11 so close to closing time. I was the only one left in the pool area. Every blind was closed. I was alone in the jacuzzi and decided this was the perfect time to. As I finished, I saw one of the hotel staff guys entering the pool area and calmly told me to go back into my room since the pools were closed. I went to my room believing I wasn't caught. The next day, the jacuzzi was closed because apparently a kid had sneezed in it. There was snot, which might have happened, but looking back, it might also be my fault. About 1 to 2 months later, we went back to that hotel, and the rule to not masturbate in the jacuzzi was added. The thing is 12Y. Omi never imagined that security cameras were a thing in the pool area. So looming back, it is very embarrassing. Edit, my God. I never expected that to blow up as much as it did. Thanks. Now my must-ulvated comment is about me coming in a hot tub. Students are prohibited from organizing, advertising, playing, observing, or otherwise engaging in any form of rummy, blackjack, Texas Hold'em, 57-card stud draw, pie gow, or poker during lunch period. Poker chips and cards are prohibited from school grounds except when required for specific, pre-approved activities or projects. Violation of this policy is subject to expulsion and referral to law enforcement for illegal gambling. This was middle school, decades ago. Our first and last annual school district Texas Hold'em tournament, presented by JRS Bait Shop, was a resounding success. Story 5. So in 4th grade, we had this thing called Wax Museum where you dressed up as a historical figure and gave presentation. So my friend was Harry Houdini, and so he had handcuffs. So as 10-year-olds, we were messing with him, and my friend put them on me. These were not the cheap plastic ones at the dollar store. They were prop ones made from real metal. So they get stuck, and long story short, I was in the office with 3 people around me trying to get the handcuffs open with pins and a pumpkin knife. My sister said when she had to do it, there was no handcuffs allowed. Thanks, Nathan, for trapping me. Story 6. I recently just beat cancer at 13. When I would stay at the hospital, they would have to test my urine. Capri Suns made me pee better, and the floor had Capri Suns on the floor. Long story short, I depleted the Capri Sun supply on the whole floor twice. The cafeteria ended up making a rule that you have to order Capri Suns through them. Story 7. The winery we had our wedding at no longer has weddings. Edit the story, of course, nothing particularly unexpected, but essentially my groomsmen can really drink. Most everyone else, not so much. There wasn't supposed to be any hard alcohol at the venue, so of course my gifts to the groomsmen were engraved flasks, which of course we all promptly filled with who knows what devil juice they pilfered, distilled, or otherwise acquired. I should note that our wedding planner was pretty uptight in general, and especially about this no hard liquor thing, which my dudes essentially took as a challenge. Okay. We proceeded to get pretty smashed and get my old man pretty smashed and several members of the bridal party. And I'm pretty sure some of the catering staff too. Thank Odin, this mostly went down after the ceremony. Naturally, drunken shenanigans ensue. Best man had to have the mic taken from him after revealing my arrest record to my new in-laws. One groomsman fell into and somehow damaged the fountain out front. Another groomsman passed out in the parking lot, big fella, too, and I can't really remember what else. All in all, it was really just of a party, but the venue was definitely not prepared for our level of energy. Just celebrated our 7-year anniversary 1 month ago today. Story 8. The library started putting up signs about authorized computer activities because I remotely rebooted the computers of noisy kids over and over. To be fair, it was a library. Story 9. My old job. My numbers were suffering, and I was told I needed to shape up or I would be done. The way I saw it, there was no possible way to meet the numbers by following the process. It turned out I was right. Everyone else came to the conclusion, but no one challenged leadership. So everyone was doing their own thing, then doctoring up the system notes after the fact to make it look like the established business rules were effective. So I'm like it, in getting fired anyway. I documented everything I was doing different in great detail, showing how my way was faster. Eventually, I was found out, and I presented my findings as well as my evidence of the doctoring everyone else was doing. As a result, they asked me to evaluate the processes for the entire department, and I ended up finding numerous areas of waste and inefficiencies, which we implemented to streamline things 2 to 3 times faster than before. On top of that, I was placed in charge of a special expedite team, to whom the rules did not apply, and we were given free rein to accomplish our assigned high-priority tasks by any means necessary. I moved on to another division, but the policies are still in effect today, and the expedite team is still a thing. Edit skimmed the comments, and I figure it'll address some of the recurring themes. I would say it wasn't courageous per se. I just literally had nothing to lose. If you wanted to pin a virtue to it, I would say integrity, because I wasn't going to lie. I'm not going to reveal any identifying information, but this was for a CVO. Basically, if you say you're a board-certified cardiologist, it's our job to verify that your credentials are all accurate, current, and there are no sanctions against your ability to practice. We don't want people to go sending patients to DR, Hannibal Lecter, or anything. I'm no longer in that department. I've moved on to IT, doing site administration, web development, etc. And yes, I'm aware of how lucky I am my leadership listened to me. Instead of just stonewalling, I was kind of dumbstruck, as I was fully expecting an obstinate, "We don't care about your facts. We care about the process" line. I'd even taken home most of my personal effects by then, and everything else I could fit in my duffel bag. To find out I didn't need it was not only a relief, but also a bit panic-inducing, because I was totally not prepared to audit every other function's process. But anyway, that mentality sort of spread throughout the organization. And now we have dedicated individuals whose sole purpose is to sit down with people and watch them do their jobs and ask the stupid questions. "That looks like it takes a long time. Why do you have to do it that way?" Or etc. And you'd be surprised how many times, at least at first. It's been a good 10 years now, so we've cut away. A lot of fat people just stopped. And what I have no idea. That really doesn't make sense, does it? In project management circles, that's known as a Jimbo walk. You go to where the work is done and try to find ways it can be done more efficiently without sacrificing quality. A lot of the time, it's because people simply don't know there's a better way, like manually drawing a chart, because they were completely unaware Excel could draw a chart for them based on a data table. And thank for the gold, I just recently started using Reddit, and that's actually my first one. Story 10, no, singing Les Miserables at work. That first song with the prisoners working, me with a mop, edit earlier in that shift, I brought about a rule against Bohemian Rhapsody too. Story 11, birds are not considered a pattern on polos for school dress code. I had a shirt with toucans on it, and the dean called me out in front of the whole school. Story 12, in elementary school, 2nd grade, I think. I had to pee really, really bad, but I was in music class, and my teacher was singing us a song, A&S playing guitar, so I went up to her anyways and asked to pee, and she got upset. And since then, she would remind us all that we can't go up to her while she's singing to ask to pee. I just didn't want to pee my pants, woman. Story 13, my high school made us leave our backpacks in our lockers because my Spanish teacher tripped over mine and sprained her ankle. She was on crutches and everything. She was raging, but I still felt really bad. Story 14, there's a required pin to change profile pictures on the classroom iPads now. This is because I decided to change every staff member's profile picture in the school iPads to a smiling, old Mexican man on April 1st. Story 15, in high school, my group of friends and me started bringing a grill to school to make toasted ham cheese sandwiches in the lunch breaks. Soon after, more and more kids brought their grills to school. After about a week, the school banned grills on school property completely, as they claimed it was a fire hazard. Story 16, no obscene or disturbing costumes. For Halloween last year in school, I applied makeup following some Whitey tutorial I saw to make myself look like Two-Face from that Batman movie. Looked like my face was ripped off. Story 17, I was going to my first guitar lesson at school. So I asked someone where the band room was, and he pointed in its general direction. I tried to open the door that led to the room he pointed at, but it was kind of hard to open, so I pushed harder, and a giant bookcase came crashing down onto the floor. I don't have any idea why they put a huge bookcase in front of a push door, but now there's a permanent sign on the door that says, "Do not open this door ever, TLDR. I accidentally pushed down a huge bookshelf, and now there's a super angry sign on the door." Story 18, a friend and I were skipping state-mandated senior year testing because we didn't have homeroom classes, and we're having breakfast at a restaurant with our parents' permission when the school district superintendent and our high school principal got seated at the booth right behind us. Some snarky comments, and a couple of parental get-out-of-jail-free cards later, We both got off with no consequences, but from the next year on, the school worked with city-county law enforcement to ensure no one else got away with the same thing. As far as I know, they're still doing countywide restaurant sweeps 20-some-odd year later. Edit a word. Edit to another word. Story 19. Some dude was caught jerking off into a milkshake in a kitchen where I was the dishwasher. He was fired, but the cook jokingly proposed a rule from now on. Before we serve a milkshake, we squirt some of it into Jin's waitress' vagina. If she gets pregnant, we know it's contaminated. If she's not pregnant, she can just squirt it back into the cup. One of the other waiters was like, "Wait, doesn't it take 9 months to find out a girl is pregnant?" I dropped a whole stack of dishes. I was laughing so hard. Story 20. At a previous place of work, you cannot lock the wheels on the rolling carts. I had a micromanager that did not know how to do anything my job entailed, but wouldn't let that stop him from telling me bullshit like we need to 83 of specific unit through to stress testing by the end of today, or else there will be repercussions, except we can't, because a certain micromanager failed to order the parts we needed to do that. Anyway, one day I was feeling like and did not want to deal with him, so I got every unit ID need for that day, made some walls around me, and locked the wheels on them so no one could get to me. Then for good measure, I put on some music and cranked it up loud. It was hard to keep the smirk off my face when micromanager started poking his head into the open slots of units ID already worked on trying to get my attention. My floor manager just sent me emails that day for whatever she needed, and all of that got done. Of course, Edit forgot to mention, I have no idea why the music was apparently fine, but locking wheels was the issue. Story 21. There was supposed to be a cap on vacation time at one of my previous employers. I don't know why no one ever picked this up. It was a startup. Still, people had left before I did, but the vacation kept accruing. When I left, instead of 2 weeks in the bank, there were 5 weeks in there, and they had to pay me. I'm sure they could have jumped through hoops, but there wasn't anything in the handbook that had a cap in writing, although we were told it was 2 weeks. So they just paid me. The fact I didn't leave on bad terms helped a lot, I'm sure. Well, I got the check. It was for 9 weeks, not 5. Why 9, you ask? We also had a policy that after 5 years, you could take a month-long sabbatical. This was considered earned time, and if you didn't take it and left the company, it was payable as in used PTO. After I left, they made sure no one had more than 2 weeks of PTO banked, put out a new handbook, and they ended the sabbatical for new employees going forward. People grandfathered and got to keep it. Story 22. No, throwing graded homework assignments in the garbage after they're returned. I got into an argument with a high school teacher that had been gone for 3 weeks about how a paper was graded, as the sub we had did not relay instructions correctly. We talked and talked and talked about how instructions were relayed versus what he had told the sub to tell us. Several other students backed me up. He wouldn't consider a redo on the assignment that half the class failed. Argument ended with me tearing the paper in half and tossing it in the garbage right at his desk. He tried saying that was extremely disrespectful to do, as he spent a long time grading it. I said it's extremely disrespectful that you claim your instructions were relayed a certain way when you weren't even here and you have no student agreeing with you. Quick note, the teacher I had argued with was a longtime family friend of the principal. They went to the same church, had children in the same grade, grew up in the same small town. I was sent to the office and was kicked out of that class. The principal tried to suspend me for being insubordinate with throwing away my paper that was handed back. I said, I dare you to suspend me for something that every single one of your students does, including your daughter in my class. Insert smug look. 3 days later, grades K-12 gathered for an all-school assembly, and the rule was unveiled. All the guys in my class laughed because they knew the story. The principal's daughter and her friends glared. Good times, good times. Story 23. I played against John Carmack in Quake 3. He kicked my bad. I text spammed using the high ASCII characters. The update right after that, those characters no longer worked. Story 24. My high school's marching band is no longer allowed to stack bunk beds at the dorms we stayed at for band camp. Bring video game consoles to band camp. Visit the girls' dorm at band camp. Sit next to the opposite gender on the band bus trips. All the bags need to be thoroughly searched for all band trips. Note, this was not my sole doing, but the combined efforts of basically my entire senior class in a band. Story 25. My elementary school banned plastic knives from the cafeteria because my friends and I would steal a bunch and pretend to be in the Hunger Games and fake stab each other at lunch. Story 26. My cousins and I were banned from playing near glass surfaces when we were younger. When I was 6, my cousin told me I wasn't as strong as him because I was a girl and proceeded to hold the handle of the glass back door shut from the outside. I was pushing on the door to open it and somehow ended up with my left arm through the glass. My mom walked in and was horrified. Ended up getting 13 stitches on my arm. But at least my cousin will never forget the sheer strength of determined women. Story 27. Only 2 servings of fried okra allowed at my college cafeteria. I went to college in the South. I had never tasted fried okra before. I went crazy and ate plateful after plateful. Story 28, no throwing grass when you're on school grounds. This was in junior high. School grass was just cut and drying up. So in just a few seconds, you easily could get a big handful of grass. Friend and I were throwing it at each other. I started it. And a couple other people did after seeing us. They had an announcement each morning for the next couple days to not throw grass. Story 29, no climbing trees. I climbed to the top of a tree. It was pretty big. And then I made a branch fall that almost landed on top of a teacher's head. Needless to say, climbing trees are now banned at my school. Story 30, when I was a kid, we had a contest where we got divided into teams and had to design and build solar power model boats, which we were then supposed to race on the pond behind the school. We had an odd number of people, so I was put on the one team that had 3 people instead of 2, and I got stuck with a pair of idiots that just wanted to off the whole time. So I asked if I could just be on a team by myself. I made my boat a catamaran design, made in one piece out of insulating foam, and made it an airboat. Instead of trying to fiddle fuck a water propeller, I used one of the little red plastic props off the old balsa flyers we all loved as kids might trounce the field. So they ran the race 3 more times with the same result. They made a rule that you had to be on a team defined as more than one person to compete. Right? It's totally unfair that I had no one to help while you other did. Unfair to them. Somehow, edit minor typo. Plus, just to make it worse, there were several teams where a parent had clearly done the entire project for the kids involved, or bought a model and just fixed the project kit to it. Most other designs were made out of, or lacked any way of trimming out the steering or thrust to account for crosswind or tendency to track crooked, while mine drew basically no water and the pylon with the prop on it could be rotated. I hadn't thought about this in years, but now I'm a little butt mad all over again. Story 31, no more Pictionary at Grandma's house. My sister and I were on the same team. I pulled 911 while my aunt made some really odd topics. I drew 2 tall lines for the buildings and started to draw a plane as 2 arches. I got halfway through the first arch, and she got it. A giant fight erupted with my big Italian family. That we were cheating. This was, of course, not the first or last game banned by my grandma. Our highly competitive and argumentative family isn't allowed to play spoon's nose. Apples to apples, old people don't get younger people choosing the funniest answer, not the correct one, or musical chairs, broken arms. Story 32, Pokemon was banned in our Catholic elementary school because the principal thought my friend and I were praising it instead of Jesus. It was quite a ride. Story 33, no more phones in classes, breaks, or otherwise. You want to use your phone, dash to the cafeteria, and hope that the 10-minute break is worth it and enough. No more going on cultural exchanges with other schools. And if we are, then they're going to have to check us for alcohol content. And you have to make a promise that you will never get into any sort of altercations with students from other schools. No more wearing whatever you like. Students now have to wear proper school uniforms. My boys and I acted. So while we literally change how our high school works, to this day, our juniors hate us. This is in Japan, BTW. KK. Story 34, not a rule yet, but they might time restroom times because of me. Apparently am the only one at work who takes it there. But let me ask you, if you work 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day, why at home and lose time when you can just at work and get paid to do it? Story 35, it isn't a rule, but I once ran away to home while I was in kindergarten. They put up a button that only could be reached by grown-ups, so it won't happen again. Story 36, you can no longer write whatever you want for the creative component in the English exam. So in high school, we had to read the most boring book ever, The Secret River. I didn't read it. So for our Sac State-wide school assessed coursework, in Australia, it basically defines your life. There's a creative exam where we have a visual prompt, and we were told you can write whatever you want. What they meant was you could write a news article or a new perspective of one of the characters or a book review. So I thought, screw it, I'm writing Secret River, the musical, 2 pages, 10 verses. None of the teachers knew what to do with it. Some thought I deserved an A because I was a mad genius. Some thought I was clearly trying to hide the fact I didn't read the book. It has to be examined and cross-examined twice. But because they have to give everyone back their results at the same time, no one got their results back for a month. Everyone was pissed. When we got it back, I was told I was never to do that again. Story 37, my roommate in college documented everything I did in a blog, which included pictures of my stuff. I tried immature ways of getting her to stop. I followed her blog BC. I didn't know how to do proper conflict resolution. I had already asked if something was up, and she said no, which turned out to be a lie, as I then found the blog. She made a new blog about me, and when I found that, I asked her to stop. She wouldn't, a friend told an RA. Nothing happened to her, but the next year there were new cyberbullying rules in place for those curious. Her main complaints were how quickly I got out of bed, how I would nap before my work shifts, and how I wouldn't take out her recycling. Story 38, when I first started working as a vet tech, we would put syringes with sedatives for the animals in our scrub pockets for easy access. Then one day, I forgot I had sedatives in my pocket because both the doctor and I had drawn the meds up and chose to use his. Then I bent down to get something and felt something stab me. It was the syringe with sedatives that I injected into myself. Luckily, it was a small dose, so they drove me to a hospital and gave me a tetanus shot, and then I went home and slept it off. Now, there's the rule: no sedatives in pockets. Story 39, no loading your sales numbers in the contest period to ensure victory. Not my fault they left the loophole and had to pay me the 10 grand for doing no extra work or selling. Story 40, I got a rule lifted. At my high school, students were barred from both being in the drama department shows and working on them as techs. The reasoning was that grades would suffer. When I did both behind the administration's back, they realized it actually isn't a big deal and overturned it. Story 41, mind. This was one of the most toxic workforces I'd ever been in, and I didn't even get punished for it. The bar was so high for bullshit like this, but no employees are to put their fellow employees on any form of Deadpool or Death Note. And they're posted on the break room bulletin board. Yeah, we hated the out of each other there. Company didn't want to break the team up, though there was literally no one else qualified or experienced enough that could replace us on a critical tasking. We were the best they had, and the egos showed their asses. Story 42, the school I graduated from now has a rule that their history teachers can't study serial killers anymore, even as a side or bonus project. My older sister had a project of serial killer but couldn't pick one because, like a normal human being, she only knew of like 2 or 3 and didn't want to go with one that everyone was going to use. I, however, am not normal, and at the time I was big into killers. Well, my Facebook wasn't private, and that was the only way I had to send her links, and no, the thought of using Messenger hadn't crossed my mind. Well, at some point, someone's helicopter parent was snooping around students' pages and came across mine. They tried having me suspended out of fear that I was planning something. This was 2013. So about a year after Sandy Hook, when my counselor told my dad, he informed her that I was helping with a school project. Then next week, my entire sister class got CS, and the project was canceled. I'd like to mention that they pulled all those serial killer bios from the library as well. Story 43, my office is now an officially Nerf gun-free zone after our last battle, in which I took hostages and declared myself a warlord and demanded the developers pledge their fealty to me in exchange for their freedom. Story 44, in college. I flicked a cigarette, but in the trash can outside my dorm, I know. Smoking is dumb, and I've since quit, and the trash can lit on fire later that night. They moved the trash can further from the door and made a rule that you couldn't smoke within 20 feet on any building on campus. Story 45, when I was in first grade, I brought silly putty to school. Me and my friends were bouncing around in the gym before school started, and it went into the pile of backpacks. We went to go look for it, and we could not find it. So we went back to the bleachers to look at American Girl magazine some else had brought. Turns out it got stuck to some kid's lunchbox. I still remember his name was Xavier, and he had a Spider-Man lunchbox. We were no longer allowed to have silly putty. Story 46, there was a little library across the street from my middle school that I went to every day until closing, so I didn't have to go home. The librarian thought that I was too young to be alone in the library. Yes, I did look way too young for my age, and as there was no rule against children being there without their parents, she made a point of banning elementary kids from coming without a parent guardian. She was also angry when I showed her my middle school ID, proving that I was not too young. I have no idea why she didn't like me. I sat in the same chair in the back corner every day, without making any noise. I never talked to anyone and had never spoken to her before she informed me of a new rule. I left 5 minutes before closing every day and treated the books like gold. I was literally one of the only people who ever went there. After the incident, I noticed her glaring at me a few times, but had nowhere else to go and just ignored her. It was really weird in hindsight. Story 47, hide and seek hiding locations have to be on the ground. Apparently climbing up a chimney twice and hiding on top of 2 different shelving units over 4 games of hide and seek on the second floor balcony could be a falling hazard. Story 48, 3 pieces of bacon each. Background company event catered breakfast to us at the kickoff of a 2-day, anything day event where we partnered up and used company resources to work on whatever we wanted, even if not an officially sanctioned project. It was a buffet. At the end of breakfast, we noticed a huge tray of bacon still untouched. So we piled 2 plates high with bacon. I'm talking 5 to 6 inches of carefully layered bacon each. We put both plates in the center of our conference table our group was using. We lovingly named the piles community bacon and ate off it the rest of the day. Senior leadership saw it and questioned it, but said nothing. Fast forward to the next morning, hit the buffet again, and were greeted with a sign that said limit of 3 pieces of bacon per person. That's when I started my campaign. There is no way this is a top 100 places to work if I can't even have more than 3 pieces of bacon. This was after my other not top 100 campaign of what do you mean we get waffles, but no chicken to top them with management. Love me, oh. Chicken and waffles was added to the cafeteria 2 weeks later to shut me up. They take theater top 100 ranking seriously, lol. Story 49. No. The trombone and related brass instruments won't be used as weaponry in a battle royale at school. Quit asking. Band teacher. Story 50. I work for a place called Taco Del Mar. I put in my 2 weeks and left on really good terms with the owner. A month or so later, the store was sold to some other guy. That was good news for me because I had made a buttload of punch cards and gave them out to all of my friends. The kind that they give you a free burrito after purchasing 10 or something like that. Now I could use these cards guilt-free at my old location. When I made them, I would punch 5 or so at a time, and I guess I punched them in all roughly the same way. A while later, I found out the new owner had taped one of my fake punch cards to the register, so employees could compare any punch card presented to them to ensure it was on the up and up. I messed with that new owner pretty bad, for no reason whatsoever. I like to think I've grown since then. Story 51. That 711 student lawyers can handle cases with private counsel on federal court. That you have to seek leave of court to file an appearance in a criminal case. Renewed. Story 52. Our library put a cap on how many books you could check out at one time. Me and my siblings would between us check out over 100 books at a time. School books, fun reading, and entire categories, i.e. the whole children's shelf about sharks. There were 6 of us kids, so it really isn't as impressive as it sounds. After a while, the library made a rule that you could only check out 50 books on one card at a time. So my mom signed my dad up for a library card and continued on business as usual, half on his, half on hers. Story 53. In my local Benihana's bathroom, they had to put an out-of-order sign on the stall toilet because I kept using it. Anyone caught tampering with a vending machine will get detention. Story 54. In elementary school, the principal banned marbles. A few years later, my brother asked why. The principal told him, go home and ask your sister. I may have won a lot of rounds and had a full bag of marbles when my butt got grabbed and my marble bag broke a boy's arm. Story 55. Floor staff are not to stand on the check stand. Floor staff are not to throw taffy at customers. Floor staff are not to permit customers to clean the store. Story 56. Only accept one card and can't spread the purchase across multiple cards. They were all accepted. How was I supposed to know they were stolen? And no, I'm not going to judge someone by appearance like the manager said I should have. Story 57. When I was in first grade, I could already handle 200 to 300 page books because I picked up reading really fast, but my teacher thought I was pretending to read the books to impress my classmates. So she made a rule with the school librarian that everyone had to check out at least one picture book out of the 2 we were allowed to check out. I hated reading picture books because it took me 5 minutes or less and I didn't want to read it a second time. So the picture book would just sit in my desk ignored while I read my chapter book. I'm still a little bitter over that, to be honest. Story 58. Non-alcoholic drinks from the bar come in different glasses. They all used to come in pint glasses. Then, I was printing a check, and I noticed the virgin daiquiri I rang and wasn't rang in as virgin. I serve a 12-year-old alcohol. From then on, virgin drinks had a different glass. So, if anyone made the mistake I did, they would notice before serving it to a minor. Story 59. Distribution. I 11M found a burned copy of my older brother's on a DVD. Brought it to school and slipped it in a kid's locker. He took it home, put it in his computer, and when he couldn't get started, he left it and went out to play. His mother found it. Next day, I was called into the counselor's office to find my weeping mother because they showed her portions of all the clips just to know what I'd been exposed to. The following year, there was a new rule regarding distributing. I used to be on DeviantArt, and I and a few others would sell page views for the points that could be purchased using real money and used to purchase merch in their store or items sold by users. What I mean by page views is that we used scripts that allowed us to rotate IPs really quickly by the hundreds so that not only would their security not pick up our own IP to ban us, but it allowed us to give our customers millions of page views in a single day. It was basically like switching from one location to another on a VPN really fast so that each IP that the site log counted as a single view for that particular page. Some people would pay a lot of money for these views because it bumped their profiles art to the front page, up in ranks, etc. Sometimes as much as a few hundred just for one customer. That is, until someone got but heard about an issue that wasn't even related to page view selling, and as far as I know, had people mass reporting us. Then to updated their TOS specifically because of us, page view modification was no longer acceptable. Story 60. Back in 1997, when MP3s were starting to hit, but the best portable storage was a 100 MB zip disk if you were lucky, or rich, we were trying to figure out a good way to get them between our friends' computers. Floppies were too small, and CDs were not really an option yet. Living in the university dorms, I thought, why not just email them? At the time, there was no limit to what you could send other than what your computer could handle, and through a little trial and error found a sweet spot to be at just under 400 megabytes. So I would load up a 380 megabytes attachment of MP3s, address them to 4 or 5 guys on the floor, and send. Took a while, but since downloading a song on a 56K connection could take 25 minutes, this was easy and quick across the university's network. 2 days later, I had a personal visit by the head of IT, a chat, and a 10 megabytes email attachment limit installed across all of campus. And the reason we can't have nice things?